a more complex action, such as programming a device, suppressing a programming in a device, or modifying one of the parameters in a given device or appliance. Say you're watching television and the user wants changing the volume, wants to adjust the volume or change the channel. And there are other instructions like a consultation. I want to see how the device is, whether it's on or off. I want to know what the oven setting is. I did it 2 hours ago and I do not remember. If I want to change it, I want to know the way it is before I change it. How does the system execute the orders? It is all based upon a database. This database, when you carry out an action, there will be modification on the database. It could be 2 types. The first type could be automatic, because it's simply open the window. You open the window and the database is telling you that you have modified the status of the window. It's closed and now it's open. Or it could be delayed modifications. I want the air conditioning system to be turned on at 25 degrees in an hour's time. So you cannot modify at that time in the database the status, but it had to be a prior modification. And now with regard to the inquiries, there would only be an inquiry concerning the value requested by the user, whether this is a status, the way the blinds are in the bathroom, changing parameters, what program is the washing machine working at, or a full modification of the device, like what is the video program to do. Now, the feedback in the system should always be present. There is a need for the user to know at every moment in time what's happening. The length of the sentences depends on the type of request. For instance, if there is just programming or action, it would be a little bit longer. I have changed the channel in the television in the bedroom. I want to change the programming in the DVD. The programming, it was dated 7th May, 5 p.m., channel 3 for an hour. And then there are shorter, and there are those corresponding to answers to inquiries, which is how is the oven? The oven is on. And then the vocabulary regarding the vocabulary use, we are limited by the devices and the actions that you can carry out within a home. And if there is ambiguity, there could be 2 types of questions. The natural use of questions, because there is data missing, what kind of room you want me to turn the light off, what time you wish me to turn the washing machine on, or there would be sentences that would be more interactive, meaning that the user requests an action, the action cannot be carried out because the action is already done. For instance, turn the light in the bathroom on, the answer will be the light in the bathroom is already on. So with regard to the evaluation we're doing of the system, this is an evaluation that is based on questionnaires, and the target we have is to achieve the maximum amount of information so that we know exactly how the system is being accepted by the user, and also discover new possibilities and exploring new possibilities. Basically because not everyone speaks the same way, and there are many options that we have not considered to begin with. Now, the steps required in the evaluation are the following. The user decides the type of voice they want to use, whether it's masculine or feminine. Then a number of tasks are carried out in a given setting. For instance, you're going to leave home and you need to leave everything off. So there's freedom left to see what kind of interaction there will be done with the system. Then there will be a further questionnaire filled out, qualitative and quantitative questions, and then a further interview for us to gather the information. So out of the evaluations we've done so far, the results we've had is that the feminine voice is the one chosen in all cases, that the number of interactions to necessary when there is ambiguity in between the system and the user. In other words, the system is unable to understand what the user is conveying. How many times is the system and the user are interacting in order to find out? And then we also detect that there were interaction failure due to a couple of things. Number one, the user has used a syntactic structure that we haven't thought up for the system, so the system will never recognize it. And in some cases, the recognition have failed, not because the syntactic structure was not considered by the system, but rather because the system did not have a message clear enough to consider that the recognition was done properly. So the system considered there's a threshold with probabilities. So if the recognition is higher than that threshold, or then it will consider valid, and then we go on to the semantic analysis. But if we go below, then it will not consider it. So we found many times that the problem was not in the syntactic structure, but rather the system did not consider that it was sufficiently clear. We also saw that we would need to give some type of feedback for the user, indicating that indeed whatever he requested, it has been turned on. Because now sometimes what happens is the system doesn't understand they don't do it. So the user has the feeling that the system is ignoring him. So all of this evaluation, it would be important to give feedback to the user, and so that he knows exactly when the system has recognized him. Now, the conclusions that we can draw from this system is that the application of ICTs may indeed improve the quality of the elderly citizens or people that are somehow disabled. And through Elena, we can have natural interaction in a digital home. Our development has been involving users from the very beginning. And this is an interface that is fast, simple, because the users don't require preparatory training or learning commands by heart. It's natural and it is user-based. So what we do is we translate the whole process learned previously by the user, and we get rid of the preparatory training for the voice. And the problems that we encounter sometimes is the lack of awareness on the part of the user with these new technologies. And if you have any questions, please feel free. Thank you.
Hola. Quería saber si tenéis cuantificado el...
I wanted to know if you have quantified the number of failures that have requested interaction and how many repetitions were required for the order to be executed when there was failure. It depends on the type of action. If it's like modifying the status of a device or an appliance, normally with a couple of interactions is more than enough. You have a home, says you have windows, doors, so if you want to say turn on the light, the problem will be to locate which light we're talking about. So with just one single interaction, raising the question, the user to the system would be enough to clarify if on the first intervention is not necessary, there will be second intervention. The problem is that if we're talking about programming, it will depend on the number of parameters we need to configure it to program. For instance, it's not the same to program the air conditioning. You just need the temperature and the time. And in that case, you are needing a couple of interactions, multiplied times 2, because you asked twice, so that would be 4. Now, programming DVD will require date to start, date, hour, channel, so all that is 4 pieces of information times 2 questions, that's 8 interventions. So if depends, if the DVD already is pre-programmed, then possibly you can skip some of the factors, but maybe the system cannot understand the location. The failures, I think he's talking about. I can't really tell you. I think he's talking about failure rate. That depends very much on the user, much more than system. It's not user dependent. If you are more articulate, if you express yourself in a more articulate fashion, or if you speak really slowly, then the system will recognize. Otherwise, the system will have it difficult. You need to speak in a much more natural way. So I can't really tell you the percentage of failures because it depends very much on the way the user speaks and how articulate the user is. I was asked, the accent was important. You see, in the Canary Island, they have some kind of lisp, so maybe, as opposed to standard Spanish, they would have problem understanding. Do you have any questions in the back? Please make sure that you use microphone so we can hear in the booth. Good afternoon. How do you control false positive that could affect the home security? For instance, turning the oven on, and really the user didn't want to turn the oven but the light on. How do you control this type of danger derived from false positive? Well, some actions, once the system have recognized the action, would ask for a second confirmation, particularly if it's gas. If you want to close the gas, probably there are some other devices that will be needing gas, so switching on gas, oven or water. Once the system has recognized, double checks with the user to make sure that this is exactly the action the user wants to do. Close the gas, open the gas. So it is precisely with the second double checking that the user can confirm the instruction. Is there any learning system for the user? Learning the user? Yes. You mean developed by the system? Not yet. We thought about it. There is an approach of a couple of extra modules. One of them being a learning of the way the system works by the user, not just in accents or special vocabulary the user may have. And there's another module to recognize the user in such a way that the actions in a home can be limited. For instance, if you have children, some actions the children will not be allowed to do. So to limit the number of actions the children are entitled or allowed to do by the system, that could be feasible. So depending on the user, and is there any security system to prevent that when you're watching television to say turn the light on, that it will turn something else on. So the system is in standby always, but it requires, and this is where we have identified two commands, high probability to activate the system and another one to deactivate the system in such a way that if you're home and you're holding a conversation, the system would not kind of go crazy because it's trying to listen to you and the conversation. Thank you. Any more questions? Well, thank you. That was it from the first speaker.